Good afternoon to you. I'm Cassandra Crawford. Welcome to our continued coverage this afternoon of Tracking La Soufrière, where we continue to track really the situation in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the ashfall situation there in the country, as well as here in Barbados. We'll be with you for the next hour this afternoon as we have a number of conversations focusing on local perspective and the continued or long-term impact here in Barbados, as well as checking in with some of the experts and some of our contacts in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Certainly, first of all, our prayers, love, and support wherever possible continues to be with you in St. Vincent. And as this ash has proven that we are just a short distance away from each other. As you would have heard from Barbados's Prime Minister, the Honorable Mia Amor Motley, for the next couple of weeks, it will be an intense cleanup situation across Barbados. And everybody, that means we all have some part to play to make sure that that is a success. It means we have to continue to look out for one another and do our best to be safe on the roads in the meantime. And on that note, just wanting to remind you that slowing down is important at this time. Now, that's a message that we've always pushed here on our services at the CBC, but certainly extra caution is needed in the face of this ash, which has settled on our streets, our highways, and our secondary roadways. And the speed does not help the situation. You have to be considerate for that person, the motorist or the pedestrian, who is going to be left behind in that. There is definitely a situation where you have to take care of your eyes, so your safety goggles may be necessary. The mask needed more than ever, so don't forget that. We are reminded that, of course, the medical masks that you typically would see, the masks with the lining, this type of mask is one that is still helpful. If you can double mask, that would be good at this time. But the N95 mask is definitely the best when it comes to keeping those fine particles from the volcanic ash out of your respiratory system. And I'm telling you, it can impact any of us. So just be careful, do your best to stay as safe as possible. So this afternoon, we're going to connect with a number of individuals. We'll also hear from medical professionals, but we will start things off by talking with Dr. Mark Trotman, Senior Veterinary Officer in the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. So we are happy to be able to call on your expertise really at this time. Good afternoon, Dr. Trotman.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for joining us. So as we continue to look at things we ought to consider for the long term, let's just put things in perspective in terms of the impact on livestock, for example. And you don't think of it right away, but for me, having had a look at some of the footage, for example, coming out of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, looking at the cows and the goats, some tethered in that space. And I always remember that they've warned us if there is a natural disaster pending, you're supposed to allow them to roam free so that I guess they can try their best to find their own shelter. But looking at going forward, what do we need to consider with what the animals will now be eating? What is going to be the impact on the animals in Barbados, the farming situation from that perspective?
Okay, well, thanks a lot for that question. First thing that we have to recognize is no matter how light it might look, the pastures, the grasses are contaminated with ash. As light as it might look in some areas, they are contaminated with ash. And small amounts of ash can be detrimental to the health of all animals, including livestock, dogs, cats, small birds, all animals. So even consumption of that, grazing of grass, even when the grass looks fairly light in ash, are going to have effects, chronic effects. You are going to get the ash is going to accumulate in the digestive tract. They're going to get impactions, they're going to get gastroenteritis, and if there's inflammation, there's going to be diarrhea. So it will be detrimental to the animals. There's there is the concern that some people might have if the animal is eating grass and they're not dropping dead, then they're okay. Well, that's not the case. What we're going to see is problems later on.
How
We
much
are
later
actually
are we
already.
talking?
We're talking maybe weeks, sometimes even months later. If you can imagine, depending on the amount of ash that they consume in the grass, we've all seen what happens to the ash when it gets wet. It looks like cement. Now imagine a quantity of that inside an animal's stomach and the kind of damage that it can do to that animal. So that's the kind of visual I want people to take home when they're allowing their animals to graze on pastures. Just yesterday I saw 2 sheep tethered to an area of grass, unattended, grazing very happily. And that is really, really concerning. So, the initial effects during the actual ash fall, and we're actually starting to see that. I'm getting reports from veterinarians of cases of respiratory signs in animals, all species of animals, dogs, cats, sheep, birds.
Right.
We're seeing deaths in small, like lizards and small birds. We are seeing deaths. Bees are dying as a result of it. So it's affecting all animals right across the board. Right now, we are seeing the acute signs in some cases, the acute respiratory signs, which might look relatively mild in some cases, but the continued exposure to the ash over a period of time is going to cause serious problems to the gastrointestinal tract of the animals going forward.
Well, I definitely want to hear more about that, but the fact that you've also said that it's going to cause them problems. Now, if you go through the food chain, they provide food for us as well. What considerations do we need to have as far as that's concerned? Is there, a possible spin-off effect on us, consuming?
I'm not getting any reports about an effect on the food chain or the meat being consumed effect, because this is mostly a localized problem within the digestive tract, and it's due to physical blockage and physical irritation. Now, the caveat to that, and we really don't have too much information on it, although
Right.
initial tests have shown that we don't have a real problem if there is a lot of toxin in the ash. And some countries, I had the privilege and the opportunity to speak to experts from countries where volcanic activity is active, Chile, experts in Costa Rica. I'm hoping to speak with someone in New Zealand very shortly and get from their experiences as to what happens with the animals. In some cases, they have been picking up certain chemicals in the ash. Every volcano is different. Every chemical makeup of the ash is different. Fluorine is the biggest concern of all, but that more has an effect on the animal's health than on the meat and the quality of the meat and the ability to us to consume meat. In fact, some of the recommendations in really dire situations that I'm seeing coming out of the countries that have experience in dealing with volcanoes is to use emergency slaughter as a way of salvaging some of the meat, so you don't lose all of the protein that you have tried so hard to
So don't wait
develop.
until it's too late.
Exactly,
Okay.
yes.
All right. Well, that's some interesting information. So you mentioned that veterinarians are reporting cases of respiratory problems with some animals, and you mentioned the range. So I want you to help persons understand, from pets to the animal husbandry, the farming, chickens. What do people look for when they recognize that, something might be wrong? What is it that they should be looking for?
Right. Now and probably for the next few days, as provided the ashfall continues, respiratory signs are going to be the most apparent things you'll see with your animals. Ocular discharges, nasal discharges, sneezing, coughing, those types of things. Maybe some irritation, some redness and ulceration in the gums and the eyes and things like that, which are indicative of damage to the mucous membranes by the ash. So those are the initial symptoms that you are going to see, and we have been seeing with pets and with sheep, especially. Sheep especially are really susceptible to these things. So we're actually starting to see these things happening in these animals. And then going forward, then you're going to start to see the constipation and diarrheas and those types of effects as it gets into the stomach, into the intestinal tract, and causes blockages in that area.
Well, I think over the last couple days, today and yesterday particularly, we have been advised by the experts that the activity in terms of spewing of ash from the volcano, volcanic explosions have decreased in their intensity and frequency. But what advice would you want to give to farmers generally in terms of trying to take care and put any other measures in place to help them preserve what they do have going forward?
Right. The consistent advice I'm trying to get across to farmers is to keep, as much as possible, keep your animals under cover. If you have barns or sheds or even lean-tos that you can get the animals out of ashfall, please do so. Keep feed supplies covered and clean. Any feed bins or any silos or any containers that have feed or hay in it, keep it out of the ashfall. Keep it covered. Keep it under cover. Keep water clean and contaminated. We are very fortunate, and I believe that this has been repeated many times by the Water Authority and various ministers, that our water supply is a closed system. And the vast majority of livestock and animals that drink, that are fed using the municipal water. We don't have that many livestock farms that use streams or ponds to feed their animals with. And if they do, they need to avoid doing so and revert to using, I know there is a pressure on the water supply, but that is the only clean source of water that the animals should be drinking at this point in time. So keep water. Any troughs or bins or pails that they have out to water their animals needs to be emptied and cleaned and filled with fresh water on a regular basis to prevent them from having to consume the ash.
Absolutely. So this is some good advice here. All you have to do is take note, take care, take the precautions, and you heard about the considerations you may have to think on. It's a tough situation, and again, this is a reminder of why we have to do our very best to pay attention to all the updates, all the information, so that we know the best next moves. We want to say a huge thanks to you, Dr. Mark Trotman. He's Senior Veterinary Officer at the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. Thanks so much for sharing your expertise with us again this afternoon, and we know you stand ready to assist wherever.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
Thanks so much. All right, of course, you are watching Tracking La Soufrière, and the days after those various eruptions. And we are going to take in a look now at this conversation Shane Seeley would have had with Dr. Linda Williams. She is, of course, president of the Barbados Association of Medical Practitioners. We're going to take a look as he focused and reiterated the health considerations and the need for personal safety measures at this time.
You're going to talk to the president of BAMP, Dr. Linda Williams. Dr. Williams, good to have you on. Hope you're well. I know you're busy. Thanks for sparing some time with us. From dealing with your patients. Any patients came in to your doors because of respiratory problems?
Yes, we've been seeing people with chest tightness, mostly with sinusitis, so mostly with rhinitis, nose running, congestion, postnasal drip, sore throat, and the eyes, lots of eye conjunctivitis and grittiness, irritation of the eyes. But yes, the asthma patients, I've checked in on all of my patients, made sure that they're using their medications in the way that they should, and also taking precautions, remaining indoors as much as possible. Even within indoor environments, though, there may be some challenges. So if you're in an indoor environment, you're still getting dust in that environment, you may need to seal the windows. And in some cases, some people have taken to wearing the surgical mask indoors as well.
I see some people braving the weather, and we really must thank those workers who are forced to be out there. I'm talking about those SSA workers and the others that are cleaning down our roadways to try to contain the ash from blowing around. There are some really dangerous chemicals in this volcanic ash, Dr. Williams. sulfur, sulfuric acid, sulfur dioxide, silica, glass, basalt, fluorides, and the list goes on. And it can cause a number of conditions. And in this release, it's always good to educate the public. I saw one of the longest words I've ever seen in my life. Let me try to call it now. Pneumo ultramicroscopic silica volcanosis. Let's look at these chemicals, how they can affect the lungs, and a bit about this condition.
So basically that's just a fancy word for a condition that we call silicosis of the lung. It is the longest word in the English language, or the third longest, I understand. But that's just a word for a condition of chronic lung disease that's specifically related to volcanic ash. So because you get these fine particles, and in some cases ultra-fine particles, which are bits of glass and so forth, and silica, they get coated with these chemicals, some of which you mentioned there, some strong acids, and these produce irritation of the airways. But this is a long-term problem. This is not something that you get in the short term. In the short term, you would get the stirring up of asthma and wheezing and so forth, or even in people who don't have asthma, they may get shortness of breath and chest tightness. But in the long term, if you are constantly exposed to a high percentage of ash on a regular basis for what we're talking about months to years, then you can develop some chronic lung diseases such as silicosis, COPD, etc. So this is not something that happens overnight. This is if you were, especially if you're living in those areas where you're exposed to high concentrations for a long term exposure to ash fall.
And it's not just dangerous for the lungs, because in the advisory issued by your association, you mentioned, yes, the ears, nose, and throat, but skin as well. Eyes could be affected. Yes. And then you went on to talk about how mental health will be affected as well and the precautions you should take. Let's get into some of the other areas that could be affected, like the skin, the eyes, and then mental health.
Yeah, well, skin, you see allergies, and of course people who are prone to skin allergies, but even people who aren't. I don't know if you've been out into the ash shame, but you know, it itches, right? And if you're exposed to it for a prolonged period of time and you're prone to skin allergies, you're going to have a flare-up of those skin allergies, such as things like eczema and dermatitis. And if you scratch those a lot, then they can get infected as well. So there may be some redness of the skin on contact, particularly if you're allergic. So that's the ears, nose, throat, skin, and the respiratory system. The eyes we talked about. If you get lots of this in your eye and you rub the eye a lot, you might get a corneal abrasion or scratching. You generally feel as if there's grit or sand in your eye, and that can lead to conjunctivitis, which is infection of the eye as well. You may get discharges from the eye we expect as a result of irritation. Mental health, we have been facing lockdowns for a year. People have been struggling with, you know, being at home, not being able to see loved ones, social isolation, loneliness. But now we were ready to go back out, as it were, and, you know, we've gotten some of the COVID cases down to manageable levels, we believe, although there's not a lot of testing going on right now, but we're hoping and praying that the COVID was at a manageable level. And in the midst of this comes a situation of great uncertainty. So there are people who've been struggling with anxiety all year, and now you have a situation of great uncertainty. We don't know how long it will last. We don't know, you know, when it will end. And for some people, this is a factor that pushed them towards depression and anxiety and feelings of helplessness. We don't want those people to suffer alone. This is where your social networks come into play. Reach out to people and tell them how you're feeling. Reach out to your mental health professional or even your general practitioner or family physician, and speak rather than suffer silently. Particularly if you are, you know, indoors for long periods and you're feeling very alone. And this is where we are our brother's keeper. You should check in on people if you haven't heard them for a while, if you haven't seen your elderly neighbors for a while, and you don't know how they're doing. Check in on them. Make sure that they have what they need, that they're dealing with the uncertainty that they face, and that they're not, feeling despair or hopeless. We need to help each other in this time, and that's what's going to help us as a nation to get through this, if we help each other.
Dr. Williams, thank you so much. The precautions, I'll go through them with our viewers just to advise them about how they can beat this dust and the ash, but it's all about protecting yourselves. And the best thing to do, unfortunately, is stay indoors. So coming out of all of these lockdowns that we've seen, we've got to do a bit more of that, staying at home and protecting ourselves from now this volcanic ash. Thank you so much, Dr. Williams.
You're welcome.
Always good seeing you. You be safe and continue to help those patients.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much to Shane and Dr. Williams. Dr. Linda Williams is, of course, the president of the Barbados Association of Medical Practitioners, giving some sound tips and advice there. I saw that someone was asking about what's good for eye irrigation because, again, the eyes can be affected. The ash tends to feel gritty and can cause conjunctivitis, like Dr. Williams just pointed out. But I suggest humbly that we always encourage you as well to have a good relationship with your personal physician or your pharmacist. They would know whether you're on any other medications, because not everything you just want to drop into the eye. So it would be best to have a little consultation, even if just via phone call, that person who is more familiar with your personal situation, so you get the best recommendation to take care of those eyes that may be affected by dryness. So I hope that helps to answer your concern. We're going to move on now to our next conversation as we move closer to 2 o'clock in the afternoon here in Barbados and across the Eastern Caribbean. We continue to focus on La Soufrière post the volcanic explosions, the eruption of the volcano, and of course subsequent eruptions and destruction of the dome, which would have caused all that ash to be spewed into our space as well here in Barbados. So we want to take the opportunity now to chat with Mr. Errol Maynard. He is Chief Fire Officer with the Barbados Fire Service. Good afternoon and welcome to our program.
Good afternoon, Cassandra. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure having you. We have to call on the expertise wherever possible. And so one of the things that is interesting to note is that this ash is a potential trigger for fires. So what can you tell us about that and how that can occur?
Okay, the ash that we get from this particular volcano is very fine, and it can build up on any surface it lands on. What we have found is that if you have electrical equipment like motors and the generators, or if you have these large air conditioning units, you can have a lot of dust building up on it, and it causes it to overheat, and because of the overheating, it can start a fire in your premises. So we're asking persons that if you have these air conditioning unit and you have a lot of build up on it, let's dust off the dust. Don't use it, try to get off the dust off of it, and if necessary, just wash it out a little bit with some water, and then you can use it after that, but keep the dust out of it. And not only for the volcano, because dust explosion, as we call them, is also a part of any maintenance or housekeeping housekeeping element that you have to deal with. If you have a lot of dust building up on even your fan, the normal dust building your fan in your house, when it overheat, that can cause a fire. So we generally say that fire prevention is good housekeeping. So we just have to intensify that now that we are in this situation with the dust from the volcano. So we want persons to clean them, pay attention to them, and don't use them if you don't have to at this stage.
This is the air conditioning units and fans at home that you're speaking about specifically?
Yes, and even the generators. Some people have generators, but they have moving parts, and the ash is fine, so it can clog it. And once it's clogged, then generates a lot of heat, and that can also cause a fire. And in some territories, they will have power outages because of this clogging and the overheating of the generators.
Right. You know, sometimes people think something doesn't exist because they can't immediately see it. So it's great that you're bringing this to our attention or reminding those of us who may have needed that nudge. But in your saying this, I'm also thinking of cars, because that's the other thing. Like, I drive to work and I am not complaining because people are in even worse situations, particularly over in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But you're advised not to turn on the AC in the vehicles, and it is one hot situation because if you put the windows down, the dust is coming in, and that's another problem. So what about the potential for fires with your vehicles? Is that also there? I know you're not a mechanic, but what can you tell me about that?
I wouldn't say that it literally cannot cause a fire, but because the car is moving, although you have a lot of dust kicking out on the road, the car is moving, so a lot of that dust will be dissipated. It wouldn't build up.
Okay.
So it will not necessarily cause a fire in that case. But I would not rule out anything where fire is concerned, because within the car is hot. Unless you naturally have a dirty car, a lot of stuff build up inside the engine compartment, that you will have a problem. But the dust on the road generally should not cause a problem for you, because every day you drive on the road and there's dust, and it doesn't cause a problem.
Well, with that said, what about the checks that I know the Barbados Fire Service always would insist on in terms of maintaining your fire extinguishers? What should we have on hand that could help in the event there is some kind of fire in the home space or the commercial space? Let's start with home.
Okay. Generally, if you get a fire resulting from this ash, it would most
Okay, we seem to be experiencing a little bit of an internet challenge there, and that is the thing. Sometimes that will occur. Technology is wonderful, but sometimes it presents its challenges. Hoping that we would be able to hear from the chief fire officer before we wrap. Okay, I think that we are able to hear him again. Chief Fire Officer Maynard, you can continue. We would have lost connection with you there, so please resume from the start of what you were saying about the fire extinguishers for use at home and then commercial.
Okay, I was saying that at home you will probably want a CO2 because it is something electrical, or ABC extinguisher. Nevertheless, the ABC extinguishers can come out as a powder, so that is more dust in your home. But the CO2 just come out as a gas, and it will extinguish any fire, because in this case, most likely your fire will be of electrical nature, and we don't want to use water of any other sort. One of the challenges that we have seen during this period, though, is the maintenance of the fire alarm system. We have had a lot of calls for fire alarms activating because of the dust. The dust particles are very small, and they can mimic what the smoke particles for the smoke detector sensors, and that can send off the alarms. And we have had a lot of calls that persons asking what to do. What we suggest you do is to clean the nodes, clean the sensors. And there is a dust cap that you can put on them. Generally during construction, for the same reason, they put these caps on the sensors to stop the dust from activating them. And if you do that, it would assist you in these false alarms that we get constantly from the amount of dust in the atmosphere. Okay. So here again, we go back to this thing about good housekeeping. We know it is monotonous at this time. We know it is difficult to keep the dust out, but we have to try. We have to do what we can to keep those sensors clean, that the sensors will not go off and cause a false alarm.
So something soft is adequate to clean, or does it need to be a damp fabric with a little?
No,
just a soft rag.
Right, a soft rag, those slippers, feather things that you dust.
The feather dusters.
Right, you dust off the dust from around them, and let's put the cap on there. And try to, you can't open your house now because of dust coming in to get it go out. So you just try your best to keep the sensors free of dust, and that should suffice for the time being.
Yes. What can you tell us about the deployment of assistance from Barbados? Has any of your force had to go down to assist in getting supplies to those who need them in St. Vincent and the Grenadines?
From the Barbados Fire Service, no.
Okay.
We haven't deployed anyone as yet. We have members of the CDRU, but no one from the Fire Service has been deployed. I think most of the Army has been deployed. From my other hat as president of the Caribbean Association of Fire Chiefs, there is a request for portable pumps that can pump seawater. Yes. Because there's very little potable water and the pipes are dry. So they want some portable pumps that they can pump seawater. And we have sent a request to my Caribbean counterparts within the fire departments to see if they can assist. And once that is done, we will work with the SEDEMA to get them transported to St. Vincent. So from the Barbados Fire Service, no, but as a Caribbean Association of Fire Chiefs, we are working to assist them with some portable pumps and the like. Normally, we would Barbados would send a team down there if it was a direct thing for search and rescue. Yes. Because we have a search and rescue team here in Barbados, and also within the Caribbean Association of Fire Chiefs, we have a search and rescue teams that will be deployed. But there is no immediate request for search and rescue, so therefore we will not be immediately deployed to St. Vincent at this stage.
Well, I'm sure your hands are still very full, and your team is being kept busy here in Barbados. You just continue to be safe, and I hope that Barbadians have taken note of the advice that you've given in terms of keeping the house in good stead and safe with the impact of the ash. I appreciate your input, and it's good to know you're still trying to do your part to help our brothers and sisters in SVG. Thanks so much for sharing a little time with us this afternoon.
And thank you very much, and keep up the good work.
We certainly will do our best. This is why we're here, and we appreciate each expert, each individual person who has just reached out and is able to share and get the information to you wherever you are, wherever you need it. So we appreciate it all. We're going to take a quick break, but we're going to continue to share those tips on how you can cope at this time.
As our brothers and sisters in St. Vincent face the eruption and volcanic ash from the Soufrière volcano, we in Barbados will also be affected. Here's what you can do to protect yourself and your family. Exposure to volcanic ash can harm your health, especially the respiratory tract. Use a mask or a cloth face covering. It will provide comfort and relief from exposure to relatively non-hazardous contaminants. If you or a member of your family suffers from a respiratory condition such as asthma or eye allergies, be particularly careful to have their medication on hand at all times. Stay indoors and keep all windows and doors closed to stop ash from entering the building. Do not use air conditioners or clothes dryers during this period. If you must leave home, keep all outdoor activity to a minimum. Persons who need to work outside should wear protective clothing such as long sleeves and long pants to protect the skin and goggles to cover their eyes. If you need to drive, do so with caution and use lights and the car wiper system if visibility becomes difficult. Keep checking on the latest news updates from credible media sources. This is a message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness and the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation.
We're absolutely here for you to ensure that you get all that credible information. So we're going to be checking in very shortly with Vincentian entertainer, but he will tell you in a minute that he is a Caribbean man, Skinny Fabulous. He's standing by patiently. We're going to check in with him soon. But right now, we're going to hear from Joan Ryan. She's Public Relations Officer with the Central Water and Sewage Authority in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Good afternoon to you. Ms. Ryan?
Hi, good afternoon.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us. And again, we are wishing you the best as you try to manage this situation, coping with the eruption, the volcanic eruptions that have taken place in your homeland. In your capacity as Public Relations Officer with the Central Water and Sewage Authority, what can you tell us of the state of things? We saw people were busy on social media being concerned about contamination as a result of toxins in the ash. What can you tell us about the state of things at this time?
Well, first, I just want to report that we have continued to ensure that water is provided to our citizens. We at the CWSA, we have our own in-house laboratory and we have done our own testing. All of the sources, any private water that comes from comes through donations are also tested to ensure that it is good for drinking purposes for use in the home. So all of that was done. We also have a source from a well that we have on the leeward side of the island. All of the necessary testing was done. So clearly, the water that we have produced locally is good for drinking. The
Excellent.
public has no cause for concern.
Excellent. So what state are you at? What about the sewage situation? Because I imagine it's a delicate balance with this additional pressure. Any information you can share with us? Because I imagine it's fluid and you're constantly looking to examine the state of things and let us know what's going on.
Well, when you say sewage situation, are you talking private homes?
Just
Because
generally how it's impacted. We just want to get a clear understanding about what is impacted in the island.
well, we don't really have a problem of that sort per se. At our shelters, for example, there are what we would call the water toilets, but using those toilets are not a problem. There is enough water for that use, and even in our private homes, persons have been able to conserve it such a way that they can use water for that purpose. Those persons who live close to rivers and small streams, small areas that they have dug out, they use that water for flushing and for washing down. Some persons have started doing that as well. But we haven't really had any complaints about that aspect of sanitation.
Okay, excellent. So generally, give us an understanding of the availability of potable water. Is there running water anywhere across the country? What can you share in that department? And what is your department doing to make sure that water is available to areas, all zones across the island?
Well, we're very pleased to report that we do have water in the taps. Two of the major systems that were down, we are in the process of restoring. They're partially restored, and by tonight, tomorrow, water should be in most of our taps. The system that supplies water to about a third of the country, that is being fed right now. It's being full up, and so as soon as that system is charged, water would be sent to all of the areas on the eastern side of the island that it normally feeds. In the meantime, the systems that we have been using from Monday onwards, those systems are still operational.
Carry on.
Those systems are still operational. We just this morning I went out into the communities just to do a small assessment as to determine the availability of water in the taps and those areas in particular, that the higher areas, because in St. Vincent and the Grenadines the water is gravity fed.
Right.
All water sources are from the mountainside, and so we don't use pumps, and so it was necessary to go into communities to determine what communities were actually receiving water through their taps. So most communities are receiving water. Some are not as yet charged, but by tomorrow we should have most communities on St. Vincent receiving water.
Most you expect to have getting running water by tomorrow. Do you have any projections on when you might be able, and I know it may be difficult at this time, but do you have any projections on when you might be able to get the entire island having access to running water?
Well, we will do that assessment tomorrow. We'll do that assessment. Like I said, the systems have been charged.
Yes.
And it's really a matter of the systems being filled up. Once it's filled up, the water must be transfer to secondary tanks, to storage tanks within the communities. It takes a while for those tanks to full so that we can serve the community. So we have to wait and see, determine when that would happen. As you would appreciate, persons have been out of water for several days,
Yes.
and as a result of that, the drawdown of the water is large. It's plenty, and so some communities would not receive water at the same time. So by tomorrow, we should be able to determine the extent of the communities throughout the country that are receiving water.
To the best of your knowledge, is it ready for use on all levels once the water returns to the taps in the various villages across your island?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
It is.
excellent.
It would not be sent to the taps if it was not ready. It
Okay.
is.
I could imagine that this is completely difficult, hard on your team. What is the feeling among your team members?
Well, I'll tell you, it's long days and long nights. The technical engineering team are the ones that are out in the mountain trying to ensure that the sources are cleaned. The laboratory guys are ensuring that the sources, that the water is clean enough for drinking. And then you have those of us in public relations and customer care on the ground ensuring that the public receives water. We are talking about distribution middle of the night to 3 o'clock in the morning. The teams are heading home, and so it's been a really rough, difficult time for us here at the CWSA, but we are up to the task. In the past, we have had to contend with storms, dry season situations, and so we are accustomed going at a crisis level. So the teams are on the ball.
Excellent.
They're doing good.
We pray for strength for you and the teams out there trying to bring life back to some kind of normal as we cope with this situation. So thank you for sparing a little time for us to get the message out to Vincentians who are concerned in Barbados and Vincentians who may be able to watch there at home. Thanks so much for sharing with us, Ms. Joan Ryan. All right. Ms. Ryan just gave us an update there. She's Public Relations Officer with the Central Water and Sewage Authority in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And next, we're going to talk to a man who is about action as well. His name is, well, I'm going to say he's Skinny Fabulous, also known as Gamal Doyle. He is an artist, a creative man, but certainly a man who is passionate about his people. Good afternoon to you, Skinny.
Hi, good afternoon. Microphone check. Making sure you're hearing me nice.
1, 2, 3. Absolutely clear. Great to have you with us. How are you doing?
Personally, my spirit is good. My immediate family, they're good. Most of them are with other family members who reside in the green zone.
Yes.
And I myself have been hosting about 5 family members at my personal residence as well. So
Good
in
stuff.
terms of my immediate family, we're pretty okay.
Fantastic. Now, I said that you're a man of action. You know, we see this in your music, but we also hear when you have deep conversations and how you feel about your people. So what is it you're going to be looking to do? What do you want to do in the days ahead to try and assist in whatever way possible?
Okay, well, I mean, since the volcano erupted on Friday, or I should say, since the evacuation order was given on Thursday, myself, along with some of the other artists, we understood immediately that there would be some immediate needs for persons in shelters at first, and then secondarily, there would be needs for persons in their personal homes who are hosting evacuees. And so we mobilized a small team to just kind of deal with some of the concerns in the interim before the major donations and the major aid gets to the island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So for the last 7 days, our days start at like 9 a.m. and they finish at 9 p.m. because it's a lot of logistics, it's a lot of sorting
It's a lot of KFC too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, lucky we have a decent network of friends, and
Yes.
so it's important to keep the spirits of the kids in some of these shelters up, because sometimes when kids don't get to move around like they normally get to, they get a little frustrated.
Yes.
And St. Vincent, we kind of believe in with KFC, so we knew. Well, I knew that to give kids KFC would, at least for that day or for those 2 days, would make them feel a little bit good and keep their
It's
spirits up
true.
instead of being so frustrated in such an unfamiliar territory amongst unfamiliar people.
Absolutely. So this really is, I mean, we were already coping with a lot in the COVID-19 pandemic. So with the eruption of the volcano, that compounded it. And I know how the artists and creative people are already feeling. And I'm sure you're wishing now that you could do more and be on a stage somewhere and make some money to help bring things back. So what do you want to say about that, and to encourage persons who may be feeling a bit down right now?
I mean, it's such a double whammy, right? It's a two-pronged problem that we are facing right now. And I can tell you this, around like Saturday when we had the second and third eruption, and it felt like what I call a pandemic apocalypse, because we're dealing with a pandemic, and then we're talking about you're unable to see sunshine because the ash has covered all the skies. So you're battling with COVID. You're battling with volcanic ash. You're battling with pyroclastic flows down the valley sides of the persons who were residing in the red zones, and some of them didn't even want to leave at first.
Yes.
So it's quite a grim situation and a grim reality for us to accept. However, I think as Vincentians, and even as Caribbean people, we possess some traits that make us very resilient to these types of natural disaster. And what I could say that's commendable as a Caribbean nation, ever so often, one of us as Caribbean nations, we experience something dramatic, whether it be a hurricane, a earthquake, or something. And the minute that happens, our neighbors come together and they help out. So I have all confidence that all our regional neighbors, the international community, the diaspora, they will be sending the aid that is necessary to help us.
Absolutely.
And spiritually, socially, we as Vincentian people, I mean, we're resilient. We you can tell in some of the shelters, persons are still singing their gospel, holding the little karaoke, and just trying to keep their energy up. But as a people, as not to be cliche, but we will rise from the ashes.
It is so true, and we need to. This is time for fight, not flight. You have to roll with it, and I think that it's awesome for them to see you guys doing that and standing ready to assist. One of my colleagues had a chat with Matt Zart earlier today, so everybody seems to really be pitching in. And you're right, that we across the region will do our best to help in whatever way possible.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that is very comforting to know, so it's a good vibe.
Yeah. What do you want to leave with us today as we wrap up our conversation?
If you're interested in donating and contributing, it may be better to figure out in your country and connect with some of the bigger organizations who are sending huge supplies instead of trying to send it one by one or in small packages. If you could connect with a bigger agency to send or donate to that drive, that will be great, because I know that there are a lot of stuff coming, and if we kind of overwhelm the customs with just these little packages here and there, it might sort of delay some of the more important stuff too. Well, not more important stuff, but the bigger stuff. So if you're looking to contribute, you could follow my page, Skinny Fabulous, on social media, Facebook, Instagram, the whole works. And there you'll find all the information as to how you could contribute and how you could help. Apart from that, prayers, they say, keep your prayers up, check up on your friends and family who are from St. Vincent. Any little checkup helps, because it might, like just today, I got a message about like some cold medicine. Just one parent could need something for a cold or a cough, and they're unable to leave because they don't have a right to go to the pharmacy or whatever. It's just the simple things that could make a difference to somebody's life.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. Well said. You stay safe as well. Continue to do that wonderful work, and we're going to check you out on follow you wherever to do our part to help Skinny Fabulous on social media. Thank you so much, and you be safe.
You too.
Thank you. All right, so everybody is definitely doing their best to help in whatever way possible. As Skinny Fabulous said, you know that you want to try and send any donations through greater efforts. That way as well, you know that the supplies are getting to the persons who need them most. There's an agency in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the National Mobilization Unit. They're responsible for getting supplies and all the care packages, the personal items to persons. There's a hotline that has been set up for persons to call. And as he mentioned, he's hosting some of his family, but there are also over 800 families hosting people as well. So that's definitely good to know that everybody is trying to pitch in and help. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, there is as well a number that persons can call if they are in need, they find themselves in need of assistance. There's a number you can call. I'm just trying to get to that number so I can share it with you. And I'll do that. I'll do that in a moment. But just remember that we all have to try and help, because that's what we would want for ourselves if something of that nature were to happen in Barbados or whatever natural disaster. We're not prone to volcanoes, but certainly we have our own disasters to be concerned about as well. So you'd want the help, so we want to give it where we can. Right now, we're going to try and connect with some members of our team who have gone down to St. Vincent and the Grenadines with the help of the Barbados Coast Guard. Crystal Hoyt and Sharika Griffith, they are on island. They have been covering the story there. They have been doing their best. Of course, it's not an ideal situation, so there are some challenges, but we're going to get to here. So we're going to take this clip. They would have shared an update during Morning Barbados today. Let's take a look and a listen.
Give us an assessment of activity overnight there at La Soufrière.
Good morning to you, Shane. And well, we arrived here about 11:15 yesterday morning, and as you said, we haven't had any eruptions at the volcano since then. So it's all been pretty safe and quiet here. We actually had a report from the UWI Seismic Research Center, which notes that there has been a change to seismic activity here, and they're seeing longer periods between eruptions. So there actually has not been one now for, well, this would be 24 hours. So that's some good news. So what they're saying is that essentially it looks as if this is signaling some sort of depressurization of the magma reservoir. So that's certainly some good news. We do have to dispel some fake news that had come out last night, as it seems that at least one media house had reported that what had happened was actually an end to the explosive eruptions. And we had an instance where the UWI Seismic Research Center had to come and say, you know, well, that's not necessarily the case. Well, there has been a break. We still need people to be on their guard. So that's something that we have to be careful about putting out incorrect information. So I just wanted to clarify that. But essentially, like you said, it's been pretty quiet here overnight. What's interesting is that I'm staying in the south of the island in what was classified as the green zone in an area called Indian Bay. And it's really clean out here. Like, you can't tell that there has been any sort of volcanic activity. And I find it quite interesting leaving Barbados just yesterday, and the place is still pretty much covered in ash, and then to come here where the volcano actually is and realize that it's pretty clean.
Interesting. Talk to us about what you've been seeing with the relief effort, because that's how you made your way down there with the Barbados Coast Guard. Talk about how that is going.
Yeah. Well, we would have spoke with Colonel Blaine Branham from the Chief of Staff of the Barbados Defence Force before we departed, and he actually said to me that it has been a very overwhelming response to government's call for supplies, and that's great. We actually came down on the HMBS Rudyard Lewis, and that vessel was absolutely laden with critical things like water and some other perishable and non-perishable items. So it seems as if Barbadians have been responding very well to the call. There seems to still be some shortage of water here on island, and as we would have arrived yesterday at the cruise ship terminal, there would have been several locals there, you know, who would have been appealing to us. Obviously, they would have seen the relief ship and they were appealing for water. So I certainly hope that they can get some sort of relief sometime soon.
And what is the mood like on the ground? Have you been able to speak to Vincentians, either evacuees or just average Vincentians, about what has been happening with La Soufrière and how it has affected their lives?
Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to do that as yet, because by the time we got off, it was a rush to the apartment to prepare our stories, what we had so far. And so we're hoping to go today. We've actually, they say that there's a Bajan everywhere. We actually ran into a Vincentian who spent quite a few years in Barbados, and he's offered to take us around today. So we'll certainly be hoping to get on the ground and, get some stories and communicate with locals so that we can really hear firsthand what's been going on.
Well, Sharika, continue the good work, and we expect to hear a lot more from you there in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but please stay safe while you're there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shane.
That's Sharika Griffith giving that report from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the story, of course, coming from the morning report with Shane Seeley. That's where we leave you for this afternoon. Before we go, I just want to remind you, I mentioned that there is a number, the National Mobilization Unit in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, for those who may have the opportunity to watch from St. Vincent if you are not sure, but there is a need. You contact them at the office, 451-2308. Just log what your needs are, your location, and they are going to assist you. I was assured that through one of the officers associated with that ministry. They're doing their best to try to service the needs of persons who reach out. So 451-2308. If you have relatives and you know how to reach them, you can share the number as well. So thanks for joining us as we continue to track La Soufrière and in the days after the eruptions of that volcano. I'm Cassandra Crawford. Have a great and safe afternoon.